Hi, welcome to another one of BOSS Technical Services service videos. In today's video, what we're going to look at is installing the MSC 1565 snow deflector kit. Now, the model that we're using in today's kit is going to be a steel 9.2 VXT. The reason I'm using this is probably one of the #1 calls where we get people having a little confusion as to actually how to install it. So we thought we'd better shoot a video, give you some tips on how to install it. Now, this is the basic kit as it comes out of the box right here. This is the instruction manual from that kit. One thing that I strongly suggest you do is go through this manual and highlight all of the dimensions that pertain to the size and model of plow that you'll be installing on. The reason I suggest that is because this manual covers all of our snow plows. There's a lot of dimensions in here. It's real simple to flip to the wrong page and use the wrong dimension. All right, so take a little time, grab a highlighter, highlight the one that you need. Let's get started. All right, so the first step in the installation process is we're going to want to cut our main belting to the length indicated, again, dictated by the size and model of your plow. So turning to page 2, I look where I highlighted for the 9.2V. That's the dimensions I'm going to cut to. Now, one tip I'd like to tell you is when you get this kit, this main belting, it's rolled up in that tight roll. Not that easy to work with if you just unroll it. So as a suggestion, I tell you to do what I've done here. I unroll it the night before, or at least the morning before the install. I lay it flat so that it's a little bit easier to work with, so it's in a flat plane as I'm cutting it. Now, since I have my dimensions laid out, all my lines marked, I'm going to use one of the metal straps from the kit as a guide, my utility knife, and it's kind of a nice way to use the box that the kit came in kind of as a protection from the cutting edge at the bottom there. So I'm simply going to lay this down on the mark, take my utility knife. Now this will probably take a couple passes, it's thick rubber. So the piece you'll be left with will look something like this. All right, after you got the belting cut to length, the next step in the process is, of course, is you have to trim the metal straps that actually hold the belting to the blade itself. Now in the kit, you have 4 equally sized straps, all right? These mount to the top edge of the blade itself. So in page 3 of the instruction manual, under the 9.2Vs, it gives you a dimension of 24 1/8, all right? That's the dimension that you're gonna cut this inside strap to, all right? Also in the instructions, it's going to tell you to cut that at a 45-degree angle. Now the reason it's telling you to cut that at a 45-degree angle is because this strap is going to mount in this location, all right? You want to cut that on a 45 because your belting is underneath there, and the force of the snow is actually going to be forcing up on that belting. If you don't cut that off, you're going to have a sharp 90-degree corner there. That will eventually punch a hole in that rubber, and she's going to start tearing on you. All right, so you definitely want to cut that on a 45. I even suggest rounding all the edges off, taking any sharp burrs off there. All right, let's get started. Now, after we got our strapping cut, this is where the vice grips come in handy. All right, I basically put the belting up in position, put my metal straps in place, and using the clamps, I have it temporarily located on the blade. Now, the points that you want to make sure are even are, of course, with the edge of the blade itself and along the top edge. This is mainly for aesthetics, but you want it to look good, right? So the next step in the process is, of course, we have to drill the bolt holes to attach the deflector to the blade itself, all right? Now, in those metal straps, you're going to have 2 holes that exist, okay? There's 1 in each strap. Now, you can use that hole. In fact, I suggest you do. It's one less hole that you actually have to drill. But when you place these up on the blade itself, make sure that that hole does not line up with a rib on the back side. All right, if it does, either flip it over or drill another hole. You don't want to be in line with any of them ribs, or else you're not going to be able to put a fastener on the back side. All right, now the hole placement itself, there's really no given dimensions on there. Again, just make sure that you're not interfering with a rib, and you want it to make it look pretty even. So I basically take an estimate from the edge to this first hole, and I try to match it up with from the edge of the other side of the strap in. All right, I'm just kind of eyeing it up. And with a transfer punch, I transfer punch my hole. Then I want to go approximately in the middle. I want to make sure that I'm not in line with any type of a rib. That looks like a good location there. And that's basically it. I move down to my inside strap. I do basically the same thing. I come in approximately the same distance from my end. Now this end is a little different. You've got a closed pan on the backside that you got to contend with. So that hole that I got to drill definitely is going to have to be to the outboard side of that pan, all right? Which actually runs pretty close to that dimension. So placing that hole right about here. And the last thing I got to do is put the last center hole in that strap, approximately right about here. And that's it. Now saddle up your drill, let's start drilling. So now with a 3/8 bit, I'm simply going to drill through my pre-existing hole on one of my straps, through the rubber belting and through the top channel. Then all the locations that I pre-punched, I'm going to just drill right on through. Next step, of course, I've got all my holes drilled. Good time while everything is still attached, install your hardware. So with the 5/16 bolts, the 5/16 washer, and the 5/16 nylon nuts, I'm simply going to insert the hardware or the fasteners to the deflector, attaching it to the blade. So now that we've drilled and mounted our driver's side blade, we simply repeat the same process on the passenger side. All right, now once we got the both side beltings mounted to the top of the blade itself, now it's coming to the center belting time. This is the real reason we shot this video, because on the XTs we have a lot of calls that people find it difficult on how to actually install that. Well, on page 7 of the installation manual, we dedicate an entire page to installing the center belting on the XT models. So let's get down here and look at the dimensions that we're looking for. So what I'm basically going to find is my center line of my center section. So I take a measurement, find my center line, which is right here, and I want to measure 1.5 inches from the back of my vertical pin mounting tab. And that's my crosshatch, and that's where I'm going to take a center punch, mark it, and drill it. Now that I punch my top plate, I'm going to drill it out with a number 7 drill, and I'm going to tap it with a 1/4-20 tap. Now in the instructions, it doesn't say that, okay? It says to just drill it out and use the self-tapper, which is fine. If you don't have a tap, go ahead and use that. But in the event that you do have a tap, I prefer to actually tap the hole itself. Now that we have the hole in the center section, we obviously have to drill the hole in the center belting itself. All right, so measuring across the narrowest part of the belting, which is 16 inches, I want to find my center. So that, of course, is going to be 8 inches. Right there. And I want to measure up 1.5 inches on that center line from the back of my belting. That's where I'm going to drill my hole. Okay, now that I've got the hole drilled in my belting itself, I'm going to use my 1/4 inch self-tapper from the kit and one of the 1/4 inch fender washers in the kit. Okay, the washer, of course, is going to go on the top side of the belting. I'm simply going to pass that bolt through that hole I drilled in the belting and then into my tapped hole. All right, this next part is very important, all right? It does lay this out in the manual, but this is something that, you can kind of get lost in translation by looking at the instructions. But it's very important when you're setting this center belting and connecting it to your side belting. It's not important to get that thing down to the edge, all right? In fact, you don't want it to. That's going to cause too much stress right here, all right? It's eventually going to tear that right out of the back bolt. What you want to do is back this up some, okay? You want to have a curl in that center section so that there's a gap right here. All right, what that's going to do is it's going to kind of be relaxed and you're not pulling quite as much on that back bolt. So what I recommend doing is getting that curl up to about like that, again using your C-clamps, temporarily bolt that together. So once I have my center belting with my nice curl in it, I've got it kind of temporarily clamped to my side belting with my vice grips. What I'm going to want to do, and you're not going to see this in the manual, is I'm going to want to get in the truck, lift up that plow, put it out in that scoop position, just to see that everything does kind of work together before I actually permanently affix that center belting to my side belting. So this is kind of what I'm looking for by doing this test, all right? I want to make sure that everything looks even, nothing is too stressed, everything's still got some flex to it, everything is kind of lined up with the center, so I'm pretty confident that where I have it clamped right now is probably where I'm going to bolt it, all right? Next step, I'm going to put it back into the V position with it raised in the air, and I'm just going to check this again. All right, so we were in the scoop position, everything looked good there, we're back in the V position now. Everything still seems loose. I'm not overstraining that bolt. My deflector looks good right here. So what I'm going to do now is I'm simply going to pull this back. I'm going to transfer my 2 holes here, put my bolts in, and I'll be bolted onto my side belting. Last step is we'll talk about how to trim off the backside. So now I'm getting ready to drill the holes that will connect my center belting to my side belting. Now, as I said before, there's really no specific dimensions on these, all right? You just want to stay approximately 1.5 inches from the actual edge of the belting, and you want to space the bolts themselves about 3 inches apart, but use your best judgment. There's really no set dimensions on this. Next, using a 1/4 inch drill, I'm going to drill the holes that will connect the center section to the side belting. Now that we have our holes in place, we're simply going to install the fasteners. So you're going to use the 1/4 bolts from the kit, 2 of the fender washers, and 1 of the nylock nuts. All right. So pass the bolt through the fender washer, through the hole that you just placed in the belting. Now, as I said before, I'm going to cut a little bit of excess material off the back of the belting on the sides here. Now, the reason I'm doing that is so that when the blade is back in that scoop position, this side belting is not pushing up on that center bolt, possibly causing it to tear out. I want to stop this from happening. So I'm going to simply cut out a little bit on the corners. Again, there's real no set dimension. I'm just taking out material so that it's not quite so much stress on that center when it's back in the V. It'll kind of follow the contour of the blade a little bit better. Alright, so the next step is purely aesthetic, okay? What I'm going to do is I'm going to basically trim this off to make it look nice and level with my front flap so that this isn't left hanging. So that pretty much concludes the installation of a snow deflector on a V-Blade XT, alright? Now, like I said, a lot of this stuff is in the instruction manual. Look it over, highlight whatever pertains to your size and model of plow, and go with that, all right? But remember a couple of the tips that we talked about, all right? Tapping the center section, trimming off the front edge, things like that. Making sure that that curl is in that center flapping. That stuff really helps, all right? So if you have any more questions, feel free to always call BOSS Technical Support, and happy plowing.